We have Mike on today to talk about how, what if we had a strategy that you could use without investing uh, really any money to get in front of over 200 people that would allow you to close 19 deals in a couple of years with people that want to build wealth through real estate and transact more than once because they're looking to climb that equity ladder, right? You interested? Would that be worth your time? I think so. So excited to have Mike on here. Drew, I'm excited for you to dig in here. We can put you on your team leader hat. We can dive into the weeds here. Um, Real fast, tell us something just a little bit about yourself, Mike. Who are you? How'd you get why are you in real estate? What gets you up every morning?
Yeah, I've been an agent now for 4 years as of like a few days ago. So I just hit my 4 year anniversary here. I've been with the Casa Group the whole time. What led me to real estate was I was working a W-2. I started, listening to Bigger Pockets, and I got into investing. And, I was really attracted to the whole real estate investing, building wealth, buy and hold. So I started doing that at my W-2 job. Um, and it just kind of hit me one day when I was at work that I just felt like I was starting to hit the ceiling where I was at currently. You know, I got promoted quickly and stuff, and it was nice. I love the people that I worked with. I've actually done like 4 transactions with the owners over there. I still love those people, but I just wanted something more for myself. And I was at work like looking at deals, and it got to the point where I was kind of spending more time looking at real estate at work than I was working at my job. And I was like, okay, this might be a sign. So I started researching real estate teams. I knew I wanted to join a team because I wanted to kind of hit the ground running, cut the education curve like as tight as I could. Um, and the Casa group and Grid, frankly, like Rob running Grid, running an investment group is what really attracted me to Casa. I was like, they're investment focused. That was always my focus. Um, I became an agent to be in the real estate world, but with investing always in mind. That was like the original goal, and it's still the goal is real estate investing. Um, so yeah, I've been here for 4 years. I now, as of this year, I started running my own grid chapter here in Reston. And that's what I like to do. I like working with investors. I investment minded. That's where I kind of come. The real estate lens that I see through is through investment and wealth building. So those are like my favorite clients. Most of my clients are investors. I like teaching people how to invest. I like, helping them build wealth. I get a little bit of, secondhand enjoyment and excitement from helping other people build wealth as much as doing it for myself. So it's fun. It's fulfilling. I love it.
I love that, man. And so it sounds like you love deals, and so being around deals, hearing about other deals, helping people go through deals, right? That's that happy place that scratches that same itch that you had when you were at your W-2 on the computer looking at this stuff, right? You want to be in it. You're obsessed with that.
Yeah,
Getting
absolutely. And particularly like, first time buyers, like making that decision and that step to be like, I'm going to become a real estate investor. It's scary and it's a big step. And so being able to walk someone through that and help them avoid pitfalls and guide them, I feel very useful doing that. And I've seen the results. Like I see how much equity some of these people have built, and it's like, it's changing their lives.
what's so that's interesting. So when you got into this, was the appeal of talking about can come in this two ways, right? Was the appeal of talking about house hacking was, hey, I think this is something that's really exciting and I'm really passionate to talk about it? Or was the appeal like, man, I know I have to lead generate. There's only three ways: networking, marketing, prospecting. I don't have a grid chapter. This could be like my event that I build around, like, right? Which jumped out to you more? Because I think you get to the same place, but sometimes you go through a different door.
Yeah, I would say it started with I recognize that for my area, living in Northern Virginia, we live in an expensive market. Housing is unaffordable for a lot of people. Um, and just buying a rental, 20% down, 25% down on a $500,000 house. And frankly, in this area, if you're putting 25% down, you're hemorrhaging money every month. You're not cash flowing, not even close. Like you got to put like 45, 50 to break even. So it's not that obtainable for a lot of people here. By house hacking, you can do it. I think it's the best way to get started, especially in an expensive market, but I think it really goes for everywhere. It's a great way to get started. So I loved that first. And when I realized like this is the ticket to help people get their foot into the door and get started investing, I was like, I just want to dive all in, create education around it, create events around it. And like this will kind of bring my people in. And they're my favorite people to work with. So it's like, it's a win all around. I'm not working with people that I'm dreading it. Um,
Hmm?
it's great.
So Drew's got questions because
I, I
I I don't know what house hacking is. Drew does. So I'm gonna let Drew run this.
well, I always have questions. My first question is, when did you realize that you were an entrepreneur at heart and not an employee sitting at your W-2? Like what clicked for you that it was time to do your own thing?
It was probably a year before I left. The wheel started turning, really. And again, like I liked my job, I liked the people. It just I felt confined a little bit. I just felt like there's only so much I can do, and there is a ceiling, like there's a legit ceiling, and I'm rapidly like coming up to it, you
Right.
know. So I was just like, I need, something more here. So I took about a year to like plan it out. I listened to podcasts, I read books. I tried to learn as much about real estate as possible, just investing and in the agent business, before I finally, made the shift. So yeah, it was about 5 years ago now.
Oh, that awesome, awesome. So if I had no idea what house hacking was and you had to explain it to me on the CNN version, how would you explain that?
The simplest way to wrap your head around it is just it's a way to monetize your personal residence. There's a million ways to do it, but the most common way that you'll hear is like people buying a duplex, living in one side, renting out the other. In Northern Virginia, we don't have multifamily, unfortunately. I wish we did. I mean, I focus on house hacking. We don't have multifamily,
Right.
So but it's just a way to monetize your residence. I know people with backyards that turn them into dog parks. I know people who rent out their garages. I mean, you can get really creative with it, but it helps you offset your mortgage. You're bringing in some revenue from the home you live in.
Love that.
Drew, we talk about zone, right? We've had that conversation before, right? About zoning the market.
Mhm.
There's three ways to get business: marketing, networking, prospecting. Um, Zoning the market is a way to really combine some of these to build a niche, right? Zero in on target mod, zero in on target audience. We know our target audience. Mike's just laid it out for us, right? People that want to build wealth through real estate, usually first time buyers, first time investors. I want to own the mind share of that, right? So, Mike, what did you do to go ahead and like start? Yeah, walk us through that, like through zone. Like, so house hacking is just a way to run that play. You could be doing a different thing. We just have found great success, like everybody, that is running a grid chapter and running events because events just build community, build camaraderie, build rapport. We think it's like a really strong way to run that. How'd you run that play though with like a house hack? Because that's a very different, like, that's just you. It's not like you've got an event, you're not meeting them, everyone like in person. Like, walk me through how that worked.
Yeah, for me, step one, I think, was to kind of brand myself that way, on social media. Like, this is what I do. I create a lot of content around house hacking, education around it. I really agree with like the Alex Hormozy thought of like give, 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 give. And, when it comes time for an ask, like the more you've given, the more likely, you'll get a yes, and the bigger ask you can have. So I try to give all the education away for free, just teach people about it. We might go over numbers later on, but when I was looking at them, I was reviewing my numbers recently, and it's like I've helped a decent amount of people house hack who had never heard of it until they met me. like it wasn't in their mind. So just kind of, discussing the benefits and the pitfalls, on social media, like that was a big one to start getting really involved on Bigger Pockets, in the forums, talking house hacking, just becoming the guy who does house hacking. And like, people, I've gotten referrals from it. If in Northern Virginia, if somebody wants to house hack, like they should be coming to me. People know me. If they tell their friends something about house hacking and they've heard of me, they're going to say, you need to talk to this guy. It just became my thing. And running seminars, webinars, just everything house hacking focused.
How was the first one, Mike? Walk me through the first one that you did. Like, you were on a team, so maybe you
Yes.
had some resources. Maybe you didn't have to figure this all out yourself. But like, did you do the first one at church basement? Did you do it online? Did you have a lot of people? Like what? Yeah.
Yeah. For the webinars, especially, like, again, I live in an expensive area and this is a great strategy for my area. So like we got a good turnout even on the first one, I should say, just because there's a demand for it. Which is important when you're zoning in. Like, if you're going to zero in on your target demographic and market, don't do something so obscure where you literally have like that nobody wants to do it. Like you need to make sure that the pool of people interested is going to be large enough. And yeah, like for me, like, I think we had maybe 30 something people at the first webinar that I did. For seminars, typically we get a lower show out in person, but we had like 15 people there. It's not bad for like a first time seminar in person. So yeah, the numbers have been good in terms of people coming in, the numbers of leads that I get from it. Typically it's about a 10% conversion on those, particularly in person. If you can get 10 people out to a seminar, you'll probably do a deal with one of them in the next like year, we'll say.
Well, that tracks the numbers you said. You said you had about 200 people that you think have attended these seminars, and you could track 19 deals
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
directly to this one lead source, which is
And keeping in mind, like, because it's an investment, a lot of times they're not looking for their dream house, they're looking for deals. My lead to close is a bit longer than average, I should say. Like, of those 200, there's going to be 5 to 10 more in there that I'm going to close still. Like, I'm still talking with, they're still in the pipeline. So like on a 12 to 24 month rolling, it's probably, you're around that 10% number, but it's going to keep getting better. Like I've closed a lot of people in 18 months, in 24 months, and even, beyond that.
I love
So
it.
something you said, give is just ringing in my ears. And just like I gave my son that bucket and he lost, I need you to tell me, like, what's that one story that's going to stand out for you of someone you helped learn or house hack? Like, what's that one thing that gives you the joy of like you give, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few that I'm like, I love all of them, and I'm proud of all of them. But there's some where I'm just like, oh my, like, dude, this guy is like on the path to wealth. You know what? Like, it's changing everything. Where I helped him buy again. He was not going to house hack when we met. He was just looking to buy. Um, I discussed. I was like, dude, you're young. Like, you have a girlfriend, but you don't have a family or anything. You're in your like late 20s. Like, have you thought about house hacking? Have you thought about doing this? Like, here's kind of the long-term play. Here's what it could be long-term if you do this rather than just buy a house to live in. He saw the vision, he was into it. I helped him buy a couple years ago in Alexandria, and he dove all in, which I love. He was like, let's do this to make the most money possible. I don't need to be comfortable. He lived in the basement, rented out the 3 bedrooms upstairs, by the room, short and midterm rentals, which you can't do in a lot of places around here, but in City of Alexandria you can. And that's so we targeted that knowing he could do that. So he did that, and then 14 months later, 16 months later, he was in a position to buy the second one. And he rinsed and repeated the process. He's living in this one, doesn't have a basement. It's more of an ADU, but it's separate. And he's living in the the smaller ADU and renting out the 3 bedrooms on the other side. And like his original place is cash flowing. He's living very cheaply. Some months he can cover the full mortgage, which is great in this area, I should say. Like you might hear on podcasts like where it's like, oh, I made $200 and live for free. In Northern Virginia, it's unlikely. You have to get pretty creative. But he has had months where he's totally covered the mortgage. He hasn't had to pay a dime. And yeah, I mean, he bought one last year, and it's like we're rolling, dude. He bought 2 in less than a year and a half, and he's going to keep doing it. And he had no intention of doing that 3 years ago.
Mike, can you give everybody here some, when you're consulting somebody on the type of house that would be a great house to house hack, what are some of the features that you look for in that property to make it a great play?
Well, what I start with is what I call the comfort continuum. I go over with them like, listen, you can be as comfortable as possible, and that's going to bring in the least amount of revenue, or you can suck it up and be Thomas Price and live in your kitchen or whatever and rent out all the rooms, So first off is their comfort. And I get most excited about people like, I want the most revenue possible. Like, let's go crazy. But I make sure to not put that on them. And I'm like, this is your home, and you want to be comfortable in your home. You don't want to dread coming home every day. So like, this is a very personal decision. And like, I'm not going to sway you one way or the other. And some people say, hey, like, I want to live upstairs and I can rent out my basement. It needs to be separate. That's all I'm comfortable with. And then that's what we look for. And in a case like that, it's like, it needs a separate entrance. It needs a full bathroom. Ideally, there's a wet bar down there. You can put them in if you have to. But those are really the big things. It's just a separate entrance and a full bath. If it has a sink that's not in the bathroom, that's great. You can always put them in. But then on the other side, it's like, hey, I want to make the most money possible. It's like, all right, well, are you okay being in the city of Alexandria? Are you okay doing short-term rentals and renting by the room? Are you willing to have, you can have roommates, you take the smallest bedroom and rent out the bigger rooms. Are you going to be the one sharing a bath because the master with the private bath is going to make more money? So you should rent that one out. It really depends on what they're willing to do, like what they're comfortable with. And then you'll have people that are like, hey, I don't even want them in my basement. I only want to buy a duplex. I run into this all the time. I only want to buy a multifamily, and that's fine. Like I let them know we don't really have that in Northern Virginia. You can either go west to Winchester or you can be in DC if you want to be close to the area. I've helped a couple buy in Winchester, and I've referred a few to DC. I'm not licensed in DC, so I've sent some to Brandon on our team. Janae, when she was here, closed one with me. So yeah, then that's just a referral.
Hey, Mike, have you ever found any investors? Like, I remember years ago, this might have been like 15 years ago, this guy was buying split levels in Herndon, and he literally, with the split level, created like a duplex, like stacked duplex, right? Because entrance, you go down, there's the basement for somebody with their own separate walkout. You go up, there was another family, and now that was an illegal duplex, right? I don't know what the rules are around there, but have you run across that here recently?
Oh yeah, all day. I love a split level. It's so easy to convert. Like you said, it's not going to be zoned multifamily. It's technically not a duplex. I've seen some people that will put A and B on their mail and put a little mailbox there. Create their own. Not necessary. You can both check the mailbox, but yeah, no, I love a split level for that. One of what I would say like my most successful house hacks ever, it wasn't a split level, but it was a single family in Delray, and they had entrances on 2 sides of the basement and then one at the front door up top, and they split the bottom in half, put a kitchenette on both sides, and they've been Airbnb-ing the 2 units in the basement, and they've been covering their mortgage, which is unbelievable. Like, because it was a $1.15 million house in Delray. This was a VA loan. They put 0% down and they're living for free in Delray in $1 million house. Like it, and that's a home run. And I tell people like, this is possible, but this is unlikely. Like, I don't try to, I don't try to convince people that it's something that it isn't. Usually what I tell them for this area, if you can pay a mortgage, if your portion of the mortgage is equal to what you're currently paying in rent, that's a great move. That's a home run. You're building equity, you're paying the same you were in rent, and now you own a home. Like that's kind of the goal. That's the bar that I use for like a good house hack in this area. And you can do better. I would try not to settle for worse. But yeah, that's kind of the standard for me.
What I love about this conversation, just to inject anybody listening, um, is that when you actually understand, when you start looking at real estate differently, like when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? Most people like a split level is like, it's a split level, right? It's like not great. But if it's a house hack, you're like, a split level is awesome because it hits my needs, right? Because you change the way you looked at things and things you looked at change. It goes like that on and on for when you look at just any kind of piece of real estate, right? So house hacking starts getting you to shift your thinking about how real estate is used. And, co-living is really big these days, which is just another way to house hack, right? I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Co-living is, when we talk about that comfort continuum, it's on the I'm building, I want my revenue as high as possible side because like you're gonna have roommates. You can always live if the basement's separate, you can live in the basement and operate the top as a co-living space. So you do have some privacy. But if you want to beef the revenue up as high as possible, co-living is hard to beat. The only step further would be furnishing and doing short and midterm rents by the room, which is another way of co-living, but usually when people say co-living, they think of like long-term leases or maybe month to month. But yeah, absolutely. It's if everybody was down to do it, it's like the wealth journey it would be accelerated so much. It's just not everybody is okay with. It's a little bit more work. You might have roommates. So it's all case by case.
Well, and this isn't like everything new, everything old is new again. Go read accounts from the turn of the century. You're a bachelor in town, you're staying in a widow's house that rents rooms. The YMCA rents rooms. People let rooms. Like this is a pretty common, right? If you've traveled in other countries, I've been, there's lots of culture of come stay in my house. That's what Airbnb was not like go buy a third thing, hack it out. It was no, come be like live in my residence. Yeah. So Cherie's got a question, Mike.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Not a question, but a comment. One of the things that Mike educated me on was the fact that I, as a woman, can say for the house hacking that I only want to rent to other women. And I think that that's a very important thing. Like usually with landlording, you cannot discriminate. However, it made me feel a lot more comfortable with the thought of house hacking in the future to know that I can say I only want women to live with me. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's a great point because, like I said, I have had clients that did not come to me to house hack, and I bring it up to every single client, like every single one. And depending on their personal situation, is how hard I put the full court press on them. Like if you're young and single, I'm gonna bring it up 5,000 times. Just because like you should be doing it. But like one of the things that they'll bring up sometimes is like, oh, young women especially, like I don't feel comfortable living with a man in my house. I just don't. And you don't have to. I mean, that's the good news. Like, you're not subject to fair housing laws in your private residence. So well, I tell all of my clients, not just the women, but like all of them, like, do an in-person interview. As a landlord, I would never want to do an in-person interview with my tenant. All that does is open me up to, he didn't give it to me because of XYZ, like, I don't want to see him. I want to know I want to know their credit, their income, you know what I mean? But like, demographically, I want to know as little about him as possible. But when you're house hacking, it's like, if you get a weird vibe about someone, find someone else. Like, even if they're qualified, it's like, they're going to be in your house. You need to be comfortable going home every day. So, I always recommend an in-person interview. And if you don't feel comfortable living with a man, you can literally, men need not apply, and you're not going to get in any trouble for that. Like you would if I was renting one of my houses and I said that, like, I'm going to court.
Well, and what we're talking about is just like there's a difference between a commercial and a residential mortgage, right? Sorry, there's a difference between renting a property out as a landlord and like your primary residence.
Big
That,
time.
that makes sense. It's just like a fundamentally different, like, so we're talking about fair housing and just how fair housing applies. And so this is something where there is a difference there. There's really no reason why. Um, just to clarify, I love that. That's a great point, right? And trust your intuition. Just some life advice I gave my daughter, like, I remember vividly. I was like, if you just trust your intuition, every story I've ever heard that went sideways started with, I felt uncomfortable, and like, we're all smarter than I think we give ourselves credit for. Like, yep.
There was a question about a condo house hack. Is that a possible thing to do?
Oh yeah, I've had a bunch of clients that have house hack condos. Especially, again, like, in an expensive market. There's a lot of my clients that they can only afford a condo, and they house hack it. Now, depending on your area, like for us, we do have a lot of townhouse style condos. So I've had people house hack condos where, no different than a townhouse. They have the separate basement. There is no interaction between them and their tenants. But then I've had the other thing as well, where it's like, they have a 2-bedroom condo or a 3-bedroom condo, and they just rent out the rooms and have roommates. But absolutely doable. Always check the condo docs and see if they don't allow it. In my experience, most condos have no problem with you renting a room out in your own condo building, like, your own house. But some might. So, like, definitely read them and verify that. For me, the most important thing about it is, what is the next move? Because, like, I love this, so you can scale, and you're putting, if your VA is 0% maybe, but 3 to 5% down, maybe with a conventional or FHA. And you should be able to scale. So always think of the next move. Where most people get stuck is between 1 to 2, and most people get stuck at 1. Because of, like, a condo fee. I've seen it so many times, like, where it would have worked minus the condo fee, but because of the condo fee, like, all of a sudden they go from a break even or maybe a cash flow to you're hemorrhaging $500 a month, and now you can't qualify for the next one. So always start with the end in mind. And I have other people that they don't want to scale. They just want to offset their mortgage while they live there and then sell it and move to the next one. And in that case, like, less to think about. But I always go over that for quite some time with my clients about, like, how are we going to go from 1 to 2? What's the timeline? How are we going to rent this place to make sure that it cash flows? If you have multifamily, the lender will take into consideration all of your units. If you have a fourplex, you have, 4 streams of income. With what I do with townhomes and single families, they're going to look at this like, if you rented it out long term to a single tenant or, a family or whatever. So you're going to be bringing in a lot more money depending on your strategy than what it's going to show on paper. And that's really important to know. But yeah, I mean, the short answer, you can absolutely do it in condos. Just make sure that it doesn't prohibit you from your next step in your goals.
Is it cool if I jump in and ask my question?
I guess.
Oh God. More freaking headache from Weber. Hey, brother, thank you for coming in here and serving. Real quick question for you, dude. I got Kim Chavez in here who's also helping me navigate this, but I'd love your perspective on it. My parents have been house hacking in their 80s, renting out their basement in a single family home in Burke. And it's been going quite well for them to help, just offset costs of, living. And we're going to be relocating them to, another home that they're going to be renting closer to me and my sister. And I'm trying to kind of decide if I can keep their house, even though they're not going to be there,
You
as a
have to.
2-unit separate deal, or what?
Gotta do it. You gotta do it.
You got to do it.
Gotta do it, dude. You
All right.
gotta.
Well, my question is really this: like, what have you seen go wrong? What do I need to be smart about? How to navigate that well, instead of just, whatever, undo it a year from now because it just freaking was a nightmare.
Yeah. Are the current tenants in the basement?
Here's the rub. The current tenants are going to be vacating around the same time my parents are vacating. So I can't keep them in, which I would have preferred to do. And that was the plan, and just replace my parents upstairs. Now it will be like a 2 property tenant screening process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in terms of problems, the biggest ones that I see are typically like personality might not be the right way to put it, but like they're so loud upstairs. Do you know what I mean? Like it's stuff like that. They're so loud. Oh, they're playing the saxophone downstairs. They're cooking food that smells awful. Stuff like that. It's less of like a
temperature
practical
control.
What was that?
Temperature control. You haven't dealt with like, they
temperature control, because the person upstairs in most houses, unless you have like split like divided AC, like yeah, the person upstairs is usually going to have the control over stuff like that. With that said, people in basements typically understand I'm renting a basement and I'm not having control of those. The upstairs is going to rent for more than the downstairs, like it always does. They have less just control over the home, so those things you do run into those things. I would recommend paying for the utilities, you're offering utilities included, just baking that into the rent, because that's another potential argument. They took a 2-hour shower and I'm we're splitting the water bill 50-50. They always leave the lights on and I'm paying for their electricity. So having the utilities included, I find avoids some conflicts. And just, put that in the increase the rent and say utilities included.
What about lawn care?
Usually that's worked out. Like I will typically see that that's worked out ahead of time. Like one of the tenants will be willing to do it for a reduced rate, or $100 credit, whatever, a month on their on their rent. If neither are willing to do it, maybe just having someone go out and do it for them. In my experience, usually if you give one of them a reduced rent, they're usually willing to take care of it.
Megal, do you want to talk about your house hack in the house you're in right now?
That's the other thing. Megal is a professional house hacker. I mean, you would be like a dream client. You're willing to house hack. You had a family and everything, still house hacking. That's the best.
Yeah, I mean, my house came with people that were already in the basement, and the way that I was able to secure the purchase of this property I'm in is I said, yeah, they can stay, and then I just bolted them in the basement. No, I didn't. But I was like, yeah, cool. That actually deferred the cost of, the dramatic increase in cost that I would have had should I not have had that. They stayed in the basement for 14 months. And then I tried to increase their rent $50, and they were like, "Whoa, we're moving to California." I'm like, "That's gonna save you money." But anyway, my wife was thrilled because we got our basement back. So yeah, it was it was a way to kind of take incremental steps in increasing my cost of living without such shock.
Megal, how much were they paying?
1,300.
I
But
exaggerated.
the difference between my cost of living from the last house to this house would have been like $1,450, which would have shocked your boy. But it only went up $150, for the first 14 months because of that $1,300 deferral. So, yeah, it
I
gave me
should say 1300 is a pretty good deal too. Like, it's in like Fairfax, Loudoun County up here. Like, I see like 1500 a month for basements. Like, it's a substantial offsetting of your monthly payment.
Yep. My parents are a much smaller property in Burke, Virginia, and they rent at 1700. So
There you go.
Just a
So-
quick observation. When I was down in St. Pete, it's like every house was like a house hack. Everybody's converted their garage into actual bedrooms. Um, Everybody has built, you know, ADUs on top of garages. It was eye-opening to see like that is just a thing in that market.
Rob, you left out the best part. You were part of that. You experienced the garage.
Oh yeah, I lived in a
And that was a sick ADU.
yeah, it was like I lived in a two-bedroom garage, but it was like all built out on the inside, like granite, like super nice. You'd never be able to tell from the outside.
That one was interesting because what they had done with the garage is they had fully built, and like the front where the garage door was, they had fully finished that wall on the inside. So when you walked in the side door, when you were inside it, there was no way you would have any idea that you were inside of a garage. It just felt like a two-bedroom cottage. Does that make sense? But from the street level, they retained that garage door. So there was is really like this stealth and fascinating, ADU. I've got some, just for everybody that we have a big turnout today, Mike. So that's fantastic. Um, I'd be curious to see, does everyone here, did you jump on because you want to know more about the house hack play? Are any of you kind of curious about jumping on, like, hey, how do I actually run an attraction funnel? Like you told me, hey, you can get 19 clients from this, but I have no idea how. How do I stay in touch with them? How do I promote it? How do I run that? Is anybody show of hands, smile, wave, unmute? Is anybody that wants to? Okay, I see Corey raising his hand. Fantastic. So, a couple things, Mike, like I, the how, walk me through like, how do you actually run this play? Like you said, you got people, this is like sometimes longer than a 12-month funnel. So if I'm new, like, yeah, what do I need? Sounds like a minimum, I need a database. So I've
Yeah.
got something to stay with these people. Then I've got to promote the event and stay in touch with them. So walk me through like, what does that look like? What are bare
Yeah.
bones? What I need?
You touched on it earlier where it's just like we are, networking and events based. So I look at like the webinars and seminars as a mini event, it's something to invite them to. I have people that have come to like 3 house hacking seminars, like they come back and maybe they get something new from it. They can network with the people in the group, talk to other people who are running the play and learning from them. So I also host Grid, which is once a month. So I have that. I host like 2 ancillary Grid events a month, and like 1 webinar. So we're looking at like 4 things a month to invite them to.
So for everyone that's like, we're throwing around the word grid, grid is just, this is a free education around investing. It is a chronological, like, hey, we're on the life cycle of the investor. So start in January, right? How to find the deal, how to negotiate, maybe how to wholesale, whatever different groups might do this, but taking you on the journey where at the end of the year, maybe you're doing something sophisticated. So that's like the big skeleton framework, that Mike is running like on a bigger level, big funnel. But for you, it could be a first time buyer seminar, first time investor seminar, how to house hack. Like this is all valuable. And I love this. People are coming back 3 times. So I've got my event that I got something to drive people towards. Maybe I created that on like Eventbrite or Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, Eventbrite, meetup.com. We
Sure.
use a lot, most of them come from meetup.com, I should say.
Perfect.
And yeah, I'm doing one this Saturday that's just real estate investing 101, like the basics. So, I do a house hacking one, an STR, midterm rental, short-term rental one. So it's just something to invite them to. And one thing that's nice about house hacking is they kind of fall under the umbrella of all of those things.
Mhm.
So it makes sense to invite them to it. It's not like I do invite them to like how to do syndications. I'll still invite them, but it doesn't necessarily speak to them like some of the other ones do.
from what I suspect emotionally is I just met someone. I was out and I ran into, there's a great guy I know in town, and he works at the bar at one of the, like the front door at one of the coolest places, been there forever, kind of revitalized our downtown. And he's been coming to Grid. I know him. I was like, and I was trying to tell the other guys, like, you should come. And he just started talking about the capital that he had. And he like wouldn't come. And I was like, it's irrelevant. I've imagined that the bar to enter how to house hack is probably so much lower for people, right?
It's
So,
the
so they feel like
lowest.
they don't have to pass a barrier. I'd imagine that's got to be like the biggest possible funnel, even more than investing 101 or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really is the lowest bar in terms
Yeah.
of getting into real estate because it's buying a primary residence,
Mm,
and it's doing it the cheapest way possible because you're helping offset the mortgage.
okay.
I had an appointment with a teacher yesterday, and that was her biggest fear, was like, I don't think I will, I don't know if I'm able to even do this. And we went over it and she left really excited. She was like, I think I can do this. And I let her know up front. I was like, look, it's sometimes it takes us a year, 2 years, 3 years to get qualified, but this is the long game. We're playing the long game and we're on a journey here. And 2 to 3 years might sound like a long time, but in 20, you're going to look back and be like, oh, look what I did. Like I built wealth. It's an exciting thing and I get excited about it. And I think that's contagious a little bit. So,
Can
it's
I
cool.
want to interject on something that Mike isn't saying that I think is valuable for people that are here. He picks a day every month that is around the idea of house hacking. It's the same day, the same time, and he executes the same play consistently for years, right? That builds a database, and that's the machine. The problem everybody mistakes is that the mistake that everybody makes is they do it one or two times and then they stop. And that doesn't work. Marketing doesn't work that way, right? It's like you set the machine up and then you let the machine do its thing, right? And then he markets to that machine. He's like, "Hey, come first Tuesday of every month. Come the first Tuesday of every month. Come the first Tuesday of every month." Like he's like a broken record. That is why it works.
So, oh, and the branding, the messaging,
Yeah.
like what happens, and we've seen this with other people. Aaron's doing this with STRs. When I'm consistent in my communication, right? People like consistency. People enjoy predictability. It's why we can't watch movie trailers anymore because they got to tell us the entire plot because psychologically people want to see stuff where they already know what's going to happen. This is marketing 101 now. So it's consistency. Rob laid out the 4C formula. So we've got a couple of those. You create content that creates conversation, right? That leads to a connection, right? That's going to convert to a closing, right? Or a client, whatever, we can call it that too. So for us, what I would say is, and repeated exposure. There are many people that come to our events. It will take 6 or 7 invites to people. People need to hear about things repeatedly for them to make it. That's one thing. Like, we're running on our 4th year running a grid. Don't be discouraged. Like, keep doing the thing. Like, there's a long tail here.
I
Mike,
have a real quick, I have a good story about that. I had a lead that I had met through Bigger Pockets, never met her in person. I invited her to Grid every month for it was at least 2 years. She finally came out to one of our events. And 3 months later, we were closing on a house. You know what I mean? So it's exactly that. It's like sometimes it takes a long time. I used to feel a little self-conscious about like, you know what I mean? Just like hitting them every single month for years. But the fact is it does work. And now her life is going to be set up in a way that she likes because of it. So it's like, had I not done that, who knows? So it's worth doing. Some people will never come, but for the ones that do, it's worth just the relentless follow up.
Um, I had someone come the other day. We were talking to him, and I had made a phone call. He's like an investor in a group. I connected with him kind of briefly. We'd had like a 101. And then after that, it was a lot of like, hey, this event, what's going on? Just kind of checking in. And he hit me up and he was like, you check on me more than the majority of my friends. So it's amazing, like what we think is like, I'm just doing my job or trying to build it, like, I'm just kind of remember invite everyone to grid. it can land very differently when we're giving with the
Yeah.
right audience, right? With the right audience, I'm not worried about the 90% of people that don't want to talk to an agent right now. I'm worried about the 10% of people that are looking for a solution, that are looking for someone to trust, looking for information. I love that. Drewski. Mike, when are you doing another one of these? If I'm on this call and I want to like see how it works, I want to run the play, I want to jump on, a webinar, maybe watch like the how of this, which I think is really, I don't know, would that make sense for anybody? If you actually want to run this, I think that's what I'd recommend. Hey, jump on a webinar with Mike. Do you know when your next one is?
Yeah, it's on the 23rd, Friday, the 23rd. So
Okay.
a week from this Friday. Yeah.
Awesome. So that's going to go out if you're on this call, right? We send out this recording, we will send out a link to that. Or you can follow Mike, Instagram.com, House Hack King. You should follow Mike, like House Hack King. That's what I would say. That's the easiest thing is like watch the bones of this because the house hack presentation that Mike gives is deep. It's really, really good. It's not just, hey, you should buy a house and get roommates.
Yeah.
Right. We're running down there. Who's got some questions? We got a little bit of time, Drew. You got any questions, my friend? Like we covered a lot of ground. You can go in a lot of directions here. I love what Mike's doing.
Yeah, my connection was going in and out, and it kept in kicking me out and bringing me back into the room. I had a couple questions, but I'll connect with Mike offline to save time. But I just say, Mike, this is awesome, and I think that this is something that most real estate agents should learn about and be able to offer to their clients as well. It's great.
I'll give you my big aha, Mike, my big takeaway. The way you frame this, right? Like real estate is about investing or anything, evaluating real estate is about determining the highest and best use for a property, right? So when you're looking at, sorry, when you're looking at property, if you're looking at any sort of commercial property, that is where the conversation starts. That is the very first question that we ask when we're selling commercial properties. What's the highest and best use for this property? And when you start adopting the mindset, like you were talking about, how do I monetize this property, Mike? It changes the entire way I start looking at real estate. The first level we talk about on this game is identity, right? Man, when I'm looking at to Rob's point, when I'm looking at split levels and going, ooh, that could work for me, right? Because I'm looking at it through the eyes of what, how could I monetize this property? I think that really starts to change. I think that's important. You're giving people a framework, right, to step into the world as an investor. And the great thing about
Yeah.
investing is they transact multiple times.
Yeah, and every home is an investment. Like whether they're thinking like that or not, the reality is like most people's net worth, the majority of it is tied up in their primary residence, just like across the country. And um I really encourage people to look at real estate like that, even if you're buying your forever home or dream home. But most people aren't, especially if it's their first one or they're younger, they don't have a family yet. It's like, this isn't the house that you're going to die in most cases. So let's think of it for what it is. It is an investment. You want to love your home, like that goes without saying. You want to love your home, but can we find a home that you're going to love that's also going to bring you a good return? Is the conversation.
What's the play that you're seeing, I guess what's the play that you're seeing right now that might be new or might have changed?
I'm seeing, like you said, old things become new. I don't know how new it is, but what's really working in my area is midterm rentals. We have a big demand for
What's a midterm rental?
usually anything like from a law perspective, anything over 30 days, like less than that, if it's less than 30, it's considered short term and there's different regulations around it. So anything over that, typically what I see is like 1 to 3 months. I've seen stays up to 4 or 5 months. You're looking at like traveling nurses, traveling professionals, like corporate workers. We have a lot of construction going on here, so like they'll bring in crews from out of state to do some of these big projects on like a 5 month contract. Contract workers, government workers for Northern Virginia. But it's going to be people like that. But insurance is a big one. And they
Tanya has a really good episode on our Income Flip podcast. He coaches to this. It's all he does. He's built a whole community around And exactly, it's that. It's like how do I get in relationship with the insurance companies? That makes sense in most regulations, right? If you're looking at HOA, you're looking at condo regulations. If there's a restriction on renting the property, it's a short-term rental restriction. You know,
Yes,
as long as it's a
absolutely.
30-day rental, then you could do month to month. And then very occasionally in some markets, I've seen like a vacation rental. It's got to be 90 days. Like you can rent for the season. But the vast majority of those bylaws, if there is a restriction, right, Mike, it's got to be 30-day rental.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey,
absolutely. Like,
so
go ahead.
go ahead, Mike, and then I want to
I
say
was going to
something.
say, like, countywide or statewide, like anything over, anything beyond like the short term time span, it's treated just like a long term rental. Like there's no additional regulation. You might have in up here HOAs. I can't even think of one that has a problem with it. Condos might, so you want to check your condo docs. I have seen like 90-day minimums. What I recommend is if you want to do midterm, like you don't want anything below or above rather a 90-day minimum. Like there are condos that have 6-month or 12-month minimum rental, lease agreements. And those are just not going to work for midterm. So like, know your regulations. But for the most part, it's pretty wide open.
Ooh, I'm glad you said that. After Kim, we're going to talk about lending a little bit. Go ahead, Kim.
So, Mike, after the call, I want to get with you and talk more about the midterm rentals for sure.
Are you going to start managing them?
Maybe, I don't know. It depends on our conversation.
Love it. Love it. So, what and Cherie, the money lady, had to jump off here. The other thing I would say is, if you're going to run this play, find a lender partner that really gets this, because they're going to be your partner in discussing exit strategies. So when they're underwriting them on the front end about how they could run this play, they can also be educating them on the exit strategy of how do we document this income? How can we use this income when you go to make this move? Does that make like that's what a really good lender partner should be doing for you there. Like you need to find an investor friendly lender partner, ideally one that is in this world that runs the same place. That's why being in this, like, that's the other reason why running events helps, right, Mike? Like you get lenders that show up at your event that are interested, they're investors themselves.
Yeah, that is so important because I have run into situations and it's important for you to know as well and be able to communicate that to the client. I agree with Justin. It helps to have it come from the lender themselves, straight from the horse's mouth. Because I can tell you all day, hey, if the way that you're structuring this, you're not going to be able to get another loan. Like, they can hear that from me, but hearing it from a lender saying, no, I'm not going to be able to issue you another loan is a little bit more powerful. Because that is, in terms of scaling, that is like the biggest problem that we run into is a on paper debt to income ratio trying to go from 1 to 2 in particular. It can 2 to 3, it can happen, 3 to 4, it can happen. 1 to 2 is the hardest jump.
Yeah, like how can I document that income? And I have seen new loan products actually, like more like not niche loan products. They've made some changes where they can document roommate income, or because the market is responding to the economic reality that a lot more people are doing this. That's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, I had a client that was bringing in 5,000 a month rental by the room, and when he went to get underwritten for his next property, they gave him $2,200 a month in rental income, and he's sitting there like, I'm bringing in $5,000 every month. Like here's the Airbnb receipts, here's the furnish finder, here's this, and they're just like, we can't count that. We have to go off of like if you were renting it. This was like 2 years ago, but
Sure.
it's like you need to know that going into the first one because you don't want to get stuck.
Yeah. So next Friday, if you want to actually look at this play yourself, run this play yourself at a high level, highly recommend jumping on that call with Mike, getting into his funnel, seeing how this thing works, right? But it is just that zone system. Mike, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you, man. And then like we talk a lot about, I think the heart of this call is like the agent investor advantage. Like doing all this, how's it kind of affected your personal wealth trajectory?
Well, I mean, I feel like I believe that there is something to that, like the more you provide for others, like it kind of just comes back to you. You know, I could probably sit and draw lines between I did this and this happened, but you know, I don't do that so much. But like the amount of referrals I've gotten, drastically increased when I started doing this, like started helping people build wealth. The monthly events that I do, attendance has gone way up. So in other words, my network has expanded to a pretty big degree. Um,
Well, I think the thing that maybe we skip some time too is like at the top of that pyramid is impact that we're all trying to climb, right? And it feels like, do you find it like is a big part of your calling, your purpose is to go help people, teach people, educate people, help them get financially free? So you've already getting to do that, right? Like kind of out the gate with relatively little experience, you were able to like start actually leading people and feeling purposeful. And I don't know, is that like Mike is a dog? Mike is in the office, putting the hours in. He's a metronome. Is it, have you found that that kind of gives you that fuel because you feel like what you're doing means something versus, I don't know,
yeah, a hundred
like roller
percent.
coaster?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you know, I've helped people, you know, but just buy a house that they don't think of as an investment. They don't necessarily have long-term goals, and I've helped people do that, and it's fine. But I definitely don't get the same feeling inside necessarily. But like when people are like, "Here are my long-term goals. I need you to be a pretty important piece in helping me get there." I love that. Like it absolutely gets me excited, gets me motivated. It's like my favorite thing. It's part of why you know I chose this because I feel like you know you play an important role in people's life vision, you know, their what they want their life to be. And in a misstep, real estate's expensive. Like a big misstep can really set people back, you know, so helping them get on that path and working towards their goals and keeping in touch with them and seeing, you know, how it's going and stuff. And, you know, oh, we're probably 2 years out from the next one, you know, we're 2 years out from number 3. And it's like, yeah, dude, like we're doing it, you know?
I love it. I'm glad I asked because it really lights you up. So that's, I think, gonna encourage everyone here. If you want to run that strategy, that 4C strategy, high level of success again, right? How do I create content in this event, content in the form of an event, seminar, webinar, in person? Uh, the last thing, we could go deep on this. I think maybe jump in on this next call on Friday because Mike and I were talking about this. You get maybe more connection in person. You can fill a room sometimes with like double the attendees when you run a virtual event.
Yes, for sure.
It's that, right? If they're in person though, like what that I would just share, like when they're in person, I can higher conversion, take action right now. We talk right there. The rapport is much more right afterwards. I can have the meeting, set the meeting, plant it. When it's virtual, it's sometimes, you know, they're not hanging on after the call to have those questions, but I have a bigger net.
And when I do the webinars too, like part of what I want to do there is I get their information. I'm trying to drive them to the in-person events. Like, you know, come out to one of these. It's like this, but better. And there's a lot more interaction with the people, the attendees, like not just me. It's not just me talking up there, you know,
Yeah.
it's huge.
Well, the last thing I'd say is what's important about if you want to create lasting psychological change, you need an outside impetus. So you need Mike to give you information. You need a cohort that's like you, that's going on the journey, right? And then you have to go take somebody that was where you were and and take them on that journey. So when you create events like that and you drive like in person, when you create community, like that's what drives community is well, Mike's in there and Mike, who just ran this play, can go talk to, he's your success story. And like that's, and Mike gets to pour back in too, because people like helping each other. I love it. So like there's a logical strategy of what all this works on a deep level on an event. So
When is the in-person event? Can you?
Yeah, we meet the first Tuesday of every month for Grid in Reston at 6:30 or at 6 o'clock rather. Doors open at 5:30. And also I do like, you know, ancillary like 2 to 3 ancillary events in person a month. And our next one is going to be on Saturday. And the topic is investing 101. You know, we're just going over the basics, all the strategies, kind of a high level look at like each thing you can do. But our next main event is going to be the first Tuesday of the month.
So
You know
that's mean first Tuesdays of June, May,
You know
June.
what? That we meet the first Tuesday of every month. That is a lie next month, I should say. We are going to be in Knoxville the first Tuesday of next month, and we're doing the second Wednesday. We're going to go see our good friends at Grid Knoxville next month. So it'll be the one time in probably the last 5 years we haven't been on the first Tuesday. But if you go to that link, you'll see all of our events, including like the weekend ones. Yeah.
Awesome. So next week, same great time, same great channel. And Drew is Drew's moves are so nasty. He put the shake on his internet connection, so he's been coming and going. So
It's pouring here, dude. It is pouring right now.
we've got Alex Brando, who's going to be talking to us, one of the best luxury agents in the country, and just talking to us about building luxury, which often is this doing this on a higher level, right? It's not that different. It is just when the price point gets bigger and the sales cycle gets longer. How do I stay in relationship? How do I invest more in those relationships? How do I add more value? They may have more needs because the nature of like where they are in the life cycle, right? And he's one of the best at it of like, what does that look like of building the database, nurturing the database. So if you want to see maybe the other end of that cycle, like where do we go from here? We started this funnel, we built this machine, and now I've been in the game long enough where now I'm servicing those people that I met 10 years ago, and now they're ready to, right, move up. They're buying that dream home because we bought them their first home. We're going to go deep on that next week with Alex Brando. Hope to see you all there. Go out and take some territory this Tuesday. Be excellent.